Section 1.
You will hear a man talking to a receptionist at a hotel. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 7.
Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?
Yes. Let me just check I've got everything. Sorry. Yes, a reservation. It's in the name of Hartley, Martin Hartley.
Let me see. Oh, yes. Here it is. That's for 3 nights.
Yes, that's right. Do you need my passport?
I just need to take the number as a form of ID.
No problem.
Now, can I just ask you to fill in this registration form, please?
Actually, no. You see, I've broken my wrist.
Yes, I noticed that.
I'm afraid form filling is something I can't manage right now. Not without a lot of pain, anyway.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry, sir. But don't worry. I can complete the form for you.
That's very kind of you. What do you need to know?
Well, let's start with your name, of course. So that's Martin,
Hartley. That's Hartley.
Thanks. And your address?
45 Carlisle Way.
Could you spell Carlisle for me? Sorry.
It's Carlisle. You don't pronounce the S. Carlisle Way. And that's in Lewes. Lews.
And is there a state? I don't think you have states in the UK.
No, we have counties. It's East Sussex. Sussex is with double S. The postcode is LW4 6AU. Do you want my phone number?
Actually, no. We contact people by email now.
Ah, yes. And send me lots of advertising too, I suppose. My email is hartleynitram@yahoo.co.uk.
Sorry. A bit slower, please.
Hartley, my surname, then Martin backwards, NITRAM. That's all one word.
And all lowercase?
That's right. No capitals. At yahoo.co.uk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hartley. And could you give me your passport now, please? Thanks. You can have that back now. And that's for 3 nights, so checking out on Sunday morning? OK. You're in room 16. That's on the first floor, overlooking the courtyard. Here's your key. Would you like somebody to take your bag?
Now you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen to the next part of the conversation and answer questions 8 to 10.
Do you have a map I can take?
Yes, of course. We've usually got lots of them here. Somewhere. Ah, yes. Here we are.
Thanks. Could you show me where we are exactly?
Let me have a look. Yes. This is our street here, Avenida Constitución. The bigger hotels are marked, so let me just see which one is us. Here. Yes, here. This is Hotel Columbus, just before you get to the museum. I say just before because that's the way most people get here. I mean, coming from the main square where all the buses stop, or from the station.
Yes, that's the way the taxi came in from the airport. I thought we drove past the museum, though, just after we went through that big square you mentioned.
Ah, you probably mean here. That's actually an art gallery. It's worth having a look round, but the museum's more interesting. I think so anyway.
Thanks for the tip. I hope I get time. Right, well, tomorrow I've got to be at the conference centre. They told me they'd put me in a hotel that wasn't too far away.
Oh, yes. The conference centre's not too far at all. Let me see. Yes, down here. You can walk there in 7 or 8 minutes. Just cross over the road and go straight down this street here. That will take you towards the newer part of the city. Walk on for a couple of blocks, and then when you get here, you just have to go right a very short distance, and then you'll see the conference centre above the other buildings. It's quite big.
I see. That all looks quite straightforward. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Have a nice evening, sir.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Test 3, Section 2. You will hear an extract from a talk about facilities for students with disabilities. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Welcome to Student Times, the programme with all the latest on what's happening at universities around the country. Today we'll be discussing disabled applicants and the kind of support they can expect to find, or not find, at the university of their choice. With me to tell us more is Student Disability Advisor Sally Taylor. Good morning, Sally.
Good morning, Hugh. I'd like to start by pointing out that although 1 in 4 people has some kind of disability, the proportion among students is much lower. This is partly because most students are under 25 and many people only develop their disabilities as they get older, but it's also because some universities don't do much to encourage access. It is true, though, that some have quite sticky problems when it comes to, for instance, wheelchair access, ancient buildings, cobbled streets built centuries ago, and so on. When faced with such a situation, some universities make an extra special effort to provide for students with particular disabilities, while others have specialist accommodation. In fact, all universities should have a written policy statement on students with disabilities, setting out what facilities they have, what their attitude is, and what they're prepared to do. But having said that, only you can properly understand the challenges of any disability you have, and so before accepting a place at a university, or even while you're considering applying, if only to raise the university's awareness, it's good to talk to them and find out how much they can and will do for you. The problem is who to talk to. Most universities and some students' unions have a disability advisor who is supposed to know what facilities they already have and will help with further arrangements if necessary or possible. However, all too often this person is a token. Sometimes it's just an extra responsibility given to a secretary. They don't know what the situation is in practice, and they don't have any real authority to change anything. So, given that for any prospective student it's best to visit a university before applying, it's an especially good idea for students with disabilities or special needs to check whether the place really does come up to scratch. In general, the university should provide personal care and assistance, and there are certain key features to look out for if you have a particular disability, including the following.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Firstly, if your mobility is impaired, check there are ramps and easy access to all buildings, not just accommodation or teaching rooms. Then, when you're inside, look for clear instructions on fire and emergency procedures for the disabled. Also, make sure there are lifts that work, not the usual ones that seem to be out of order half the time. And check for suitable lavatory facilities. There is a different set of things to look for if you suffer from any kind of hearing impairment. There should be induction loops in lecture theatres, flashing sirens in all rooms, and in accommodation, visual doorbells that light up when somebody calls round to see you. If it is your sight that is impaired, there obviously need to be braille translators of books and documents. In all buildings, the stairs, floors, doorways and windows must have clear markings, and there also have to be special fire and emergency procedures for you. If you suffer from dyslexia, you will need a computer for general use and in exams. And as exams may take you longer to complete, you should be allowed extra time in which to do so. This applies to work in general too. There are, of course, many other possible health difficulties that you may suffer from, such as diabetes, epilepsy, or heart conditions. If this is the case, check the availability of access to appropriate treatment, including medication and/or therapy. Finally, make sure that in the event of an emergency, it is clear what you and other people who may be involved have to do.
That is the end of section 2.
Turn to Section 3. Section 3. In this section, you will hear a radio interview with a scientist, Dr. Clark, on the subject of global warming. First, look at questions 21 to 25. As you listen, complete sentences 21 to 25.
Dr. Clark, global warming was the threat of the 1980s, but it seems to have fizzled out of people's minds. Why do you think that is?
Yes, in a way, you're right. I think scientists have become occupied with the task of trying to find out whether it really is happening, and, if so, whether it's caused by human activity.
A greenhouse effect is, after all, a natural phenomenon.
Yes. As we know, naturally occurring gases float above us, acting as insulators that prevent heat being radiated into space.
And the fear is that the insulation might get thicker.
Yes. And because of this, the Earth might get warmer.
The latest prediction we've heard is that temperature will increase by about 1/3 of a degree every 10 years. What are your feelings?
Well, this prediction is difficult to make. You see, the global climate is the result of a web of influences. Who is to say that a simple action such as adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere will not have several effects which might even cancel each other out?
And I understand that the prediction is hard to verify, whatever.
Precisely.
Why is that?
Because the Earth's temperature surges and subsides naturally. In fact, the best way of detecting global temperature change is to measure the temperature of the oceans as accurately as possible.
And this avoids the sort of seasonal fluctuations of the temperature of landmass?
Yes. In fact, an understanding of the oceans is crucial to understanding how the global climate works. The ocean transports heat around the globe. It's like a great reservoir of heat. A tiny change in sea surface temperature denotes a huge change in the amount of heat it is storing.
Now look at questions 26 to 30. As you listen to the rest of the interview, answer questions 26 to 30.
And now I understand you're looking at ways of refining this measurement of ocean temperature.
Yes. For a long time we've measured it by placing thermometers in buoys bobbing in the oceans, and also when ships draw water through their engines.
It's also been done by satellite, hasn't it?
Yes, but now data from a more promising system is being collected. This is the European Along-Track Scanning Radiometer, or ATSR, a much simpler name. The ATSR orbits the Earth above us.
And what stage are you at with this?
Well, it's been up there 2.5 years now. It's an infrared detector that senses the Earth's temperature with great accuracy, and this is what we need. We have to be able to separate out random changes in temperature.
I believe there are other advantages as well.
There are several. Every few days it covers the entire Earth, so it produces large quantities of data. It measures the temperature from 2 angles, which allows correction for any effects that the intervening atmosphere may be having on its readings. Its field of view has a width of 500 kilometers, and it measures the temperature to 0.3 degrees centigrade.
And it should go on for years.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, for talking to us today. And now over to you, Sue, in our Manchester.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You're going to hear a talk about an animal conservation course. First look at questions 31 to 40. As you listen, complete the notes by filling in numbered spaces 31 to 40.
Well, we're delighted to have the opportunity to hear from Sue Gent, our specialist on student affairs, about a course with a difference.
Thank you, Tony. Many people think that conservation is just about saving fluffy animals. What they don't realise is that it is a war to save the human race from committing suicide. Strong words, but this was the belief of the famous conservationist Gerald Durrell. Gerald Durrell was an English conservationist who dedicated his life to the conservation of animals, and among his many achievements was the establishment of a zoo in Jersey. There, he set up the Wildlife Preservation Trust, which conducts courses on preservation and attracts students from developing countries. Many of these students are making their first trip away from home. The students who come to Jersey to study are of all ages. The first was a man called Yusuf Mungru, who came from Mauritius in 1977. He was particularly interested in the conservation of large African birds. When he arrived, there were only 4 Mauritius falcons, these are big birds of prey, left in his African homeland. Now, since he has returned, the numbers have increased to 200. When Yusuf first arrived in Jersey, he was unused to the freezing winters, so he liked to spend time in the reptile house. He said it was the warmest place on the island. So let's look at how students are chosen to participate in one of the zoo's programs. Well, according to their teacher, their work or study must involve animals. The zoo is proud of the fact that many of its graduates are now in positions to influence the way animals are kept and utilised for conservation. Once they start the course, the students have to spend a lot of time studying the English language. In addition to that, they also have to cover many aspects of animal conservation. This year, 27 students from 21 different countries are already waiting to participate in the intensive training programs at the zoo. In a Principles and Practice course, they learn both theory and practice. First, they learn the theory of conservation biology, working in areas such as veterinary medicine. Then they move into the practical part of the course and work with the zookeepers, where they learn to care for the animals. Over 350 full-time students have graduated since Yusuf Mungru, and, like him, some graduates have made big names for themselves in the zoo and conservation world. A former Chinese student is now responsible for captive breeding and conservation throughout his country, and a student from Mauritius who trained at the zoo is the present conservation officer for Mauritius.
That is the end of Section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
you.